On a bitterly cold day, a young man was walking alone amidst the falling snow, in weather cold enough to freeze winter itself. He remembered that the temperature that day was 20 degrees Celsius below zero. At that moment, he noticed a small cat walking with difficulty in the snow, leaving behind its tiny footprints. The cat approached him and began to meow while clinging to his leg, which made him wonder to himself about the reason for all this meowing. The cat continued to look at him and meow, as if it were trying to tell him something, and he realized it wanted him to follow it. Indeed, the young man walked behind it, thinking that he wouldn't have ignored it and gone on his way as usual. Perhaps the reason was the extremely cold weather that aroused his pity. The cat led him to a narrow, dark alley, so he lit up the place with his phone to see. The cat looked towards an outdoor air conditioning unit, where he discovered two other small kittens on top of it, covered in snow and trembling from the intense cold. He felt a shock and hurried back to his home, where he told his surprised mother that he would explain everything later and asked her for the location of the heating pad. He brought the small kittens inside and gently placed them on a green heating pad, while his mother and the mother cat watched the situation. One of the small kittens, black and white, looked as if it had already passed away. He and his mother looked at it, and his mother said it seemed dead, so he began to gently stroke it, trying to warm its frozen body, but the kitten, the size of his palm, did not come back to life. In a desperate attempt, he used a hairdryer to warm it, wondering if he could have saved it had he found it earlier. As he was stroking its small body and beginning to feel that his efforts were futile and he was on the verge of giving up, a miracle happened. The kitten let out a faint whimper, and so, the young man became responsible for caring for that cat, which he named Peachy. 8 years later, Peachy appeared, now grown, with a splint on her leg. The young man told her he had to go now. He then sat down to say goodbye, apologizing and telling her that this was truly the last day, promising that he would finish his business and come back to play with her. He warned Peachy not to jump or make any dangerous moves until her leg healed, then told her he was leaving now. The young man put an electronic helmet on his head, and a message appeared on the screen stating that the biometric authentication was complete. As the helmet lit up, another message indicated a login to the world of Meta Area, where he successfully logged in under the name Servant Kim. In the game world, Servant Kim was performing a religious ritual, praying to the gods for the strength to punish injustice and grant blessings to the warriors, as he also prayed to strengthen their spirits and cast out evil energy. He then ordered one of the warrior ranks to advance, appearing completely immersed in the battle's atmosphere. The battle was raging inside the game, where his team faced a massive monster, while golden holy strikes rained down on it from above. The monster launched a fierce attack, moving its arm to unleash a wave of purple energy that knocked back the warriors. Despite taking many hits, it managed to form a sword of energy in preparation for a new attack. After long days of continuous fighting, the battle was finally nearing its end, and the final Flash team was about to become the first team in the game's history to defeat the giant god, Lok. Servant Kim was preparing to counter the monster's attack with his shield, which glowed with the emblem of a shining lion, while Lok fired a volley of projectiles through magic circles, which gathered to form a massive beam that destroyed the area where the warriors stood, but Servant Kim blocked it with his shield. Servant Kim issued his orders, asking the first rank to hold their positions, while ordering the third rank to withdraw, warning of another major attack to come. The monster's devastating attack continued to damage the warrior ranks, so he ordered the second rank to line up behind him, announcing that the monster was about to enter its final phase. The warriors prepared to use their ultimate skill as glowing hexagonal shields began to appear, while in response, Lok also prepared to launch its strongest attack. Servant Kim explained that this was the monster's last attempt and asked everyone to remain alert, assuring them that they would finish it off using the second rank's ultimate skill. He activated his defensive skills, using Holy Shield, Sanctuary, and God's Blessing, declaring himself the unbreakable shield. He assured them that they had reached the point where all other teams had failed and stressed the need to follow the plan precisely, or the entire team would be wiped out. They had entered a phase no one had reached before, and their success depended entirely on his ability to block the monster's upcoming attack. Lok fired a massive beam of purple energy from its mouth, and the faces of all team members were filled with determination. Their plan was to endure and then launch an all-out attack to end the battle, filled with the hope that they would be the first to achieve this historic feat. Servant Kim knelt behind his glowing hexagonal shield, ready to receive the immense blow, but at the crucial moment, he disappeared, and a message appeared announcing his logout from the game. The rest of the team was left in complete shock and disbelief, and one of them began to scream in despair, asking where their leader had gone. In the real world, a system message appeared on the young man's screen, stating that an abnormal condition had been detected in his body, and the connection was forcibly terminated, asking if he needed immediate rescue. The young man was lying on his bed, flailing, while something on his face was preventing him from breathing. He suddenly sat up, gasping for breath, only to discover that his cat, Peachy, was sitting on his face on top of the helmet. He screamed at her in anger, asking why she would do that at such a critical moment. His scream echoed outside his room window, as it turned out that due to his sudden logout, his team had failed the battle, and a rival team seized the opportunity to claim the first achievement of defeating the monster. The young man screamed from the mental anguish. His team had failed to get rating points and had fallen in the rankings, and 5 months of preparation had gone to waste. As expected, the tragedy unfolded, and a major legal meeting was held to discuss the repercussions of the raid's failure. The game Meta Area had become a historical phenomenon, bringing change to all of humanity by achieving the first true metaverse. After its release, many people came to prefer life inside it over reality, and going there for work and returning to reality after hours became a part of daily life, until the world transformed into a place where it was no longer strange for someone to introduce their job as an archer. Because of this revolutionary change, top players in Meta Area were were able to acquire immense fortunes and be honored as national heroes. With the growing number of professional players, related laws and specialized law firms like the Dodo law firm were established. One of these laws was specific to monster raid teams, allowing for compensation to be claimed from the person responsible for the raid's failure. Therefore, it became common in major events for official contracts to be drawn up in the real world before they began, and the team members looked displeased during one of these meetings. A claim was filed against Servant Kim by 15 plaintiffs, demanding huge compensation for their drop in ranking, the cancellation of a major sponsorship deal, and the loss of 5 months of effort, with the total amount reaching 1,125,000,000 won. During the session, the young man was shocked as he calculated the enormous sum in his head, while the lawyer officially announced the demand for compensation. The young man explained that the team consisted of 10 core members and 15 mercenaries, and despite some disagreements, the meeting ended with him agreeing to pay the compensation, feeling relieved by the support of his 9 team members. The young man walked out of the law firm feeling defeated, before a man called out to him as leader. The man asked if it was true that he had sold his gear in the game, and he replied yes, explaining it was the only way to compensate the mercenaries. Recalling with a heavy heart how he sold all his precious items, which were valued at hundreds of millions of won, the man inquired why he wanted to play solo now, and the young man explained with a smile that ever since becoming the raid leader, he hadn't been able to spend time with his cat, and felt guilty towards her. The man surprised him by announcing that he was quitting the game now, which shocked him. He felt responsible and apologized, but the man reassured him and told him he understood his situation. He then presented him with a box bearing the Metagear brand as a farewell gift. The young man initially refused, saying he couldn't accept his teammate's gear after everything that had happened, but the man insisted he take it, explaining he no longer needed it. The 2 men said their goodbyes, and the young man thanked his teammate. When he arrived home, he announced his return to his cats, then sat on the floor by the entrance, tired and sad, and let out a long sigh, while his cat Peachy approached him and meowed as if to comfort him. The young man wondered in confusion what he should do now, as all his post-retirement plans were based on owning the precious gear he had just sold. When he noticed his cat Peachy trying to play and jump, he gently scolded her, reminding her not to do so until her leg was fully healed, but she insisted, and he was impressed by her strength and agreed to play with her for just 5 minutes. He started with warm-up exercises, moving a mouse-shaped toy in front of his cat, who watched him with intense focus, and she quickly got enthusiastically involved in the game, chasing the toy everywhere. The young man thought about how frustrated his energetic cat must have felt being unable to move due to her injury. After the warm-up, he announced that hunting time had begun, having prepared a set of cardboard boxes as a playground. As the cat prepared to pounce, he seriously declared that he had now transformed into a mouse and would show her the perfect mouse movements, and he began to skillfully move the toy, mimicking its sounds to get her attention. Peachy was hiding inside one of the boxes, watching her prey, and then she jumped in an attempt to catch the toy. The young man encouraged her to keep going, telling her it was time to reward her servant for playing with her so earnestly. Peachy dashed back into the box, and the young man thought how cute she looked doing that, and she finally succeeded in catching the toy, while he thought about how addicted he was to this kind of play with her. After the play session ended, he prepared food for the cats, and sat with his 2 cats, Peachy and Lulu, telling Lulu that this meat was what Peachy had hunted, and that she should thank her. The young man realized he had played for 10 minutes instead of 5, and remembered the veterinarian's advice to refrain from playing with her until she fully recovered, recalling his conversation with the doctor, where he told him that Peachy was full of energy and got stressed if she didn't play. As he was thinking of a way to release the cat's energy without her having to move, he received a notification on his phone. The notification was for a scheduled withdrawal of over 1,000,000 won, and he remembered that he had forgotten about the hospital bill installments. He felt distressed again and wondered what he would do, as he no longer had any money to cover his expenses. His eyes fell on the box his teammate had given him, so he decided to open it. Thinking how one of his team members had given him this gear after deciding to retire from the game, he turned to his cat Peachy and told her that she was a big part of this incident, and if she ever met his teammate, she should apologize to him. He jokingly put the empty box on his head, and noted that he could breathe well, saying that an incident like the last time wouldn't happen again. The young man looked at the clock and realized it was getting late, so he said goodbye to his cats and told them he would be back. Realizing it had become difficult for him to aim for the top ranks again, he lay down on his bed and placed the new gearbox over his head, thinking that a person has to strive to earn a living. Indeed, Servant Kim logged into the game once again, determined to fulfill his responsibilities as a servant to his cats. His plan involved a high risk for a high return, as he found himself in the lava zone, and thought about how dangerous it was for him to be there in his current state after selling all his gear. He was betting that another raid team would be busy fighting the Phoenix, which meant the other monsters wouldn't respawn, but he realized this prediction was based on memories from 6 years ago, and he didn't know how things had changed after the numerous updates. Luckily, he managed to catch a huge armored fish from the lava, and felt overjoyed when he found that his golden fishing spot still existed. The fish was a lava bori, a rare ingredient, and he estimated that catching 50 of them would be enough to pay the hospital installment. The young man sat down and began to fish quietly, wondering how much time had passed since he had spent time alone like this. For the past 5 years, all his time had been dedicated to raids with his team. Although he had lost everything he had built in a single moment, he felt at peace in this moment. His eyes started to tear up, and he wondered if something had gotten into them. Suddenly, he noticed something strange and alarming, and wondered in shock if the Phoenix was respawning earlier than expected. A huge vortex appeared in the sky, and from it, a powerful beam of light shot down and struck the ground, creating a massive shockwave. And from this light, a new creature emerged, resembling a wolf and engulfed in pale celestial flames. the young man realized that this creature was not the phoenix, and concluded from its majestic appearance that it was a new boss monster that required a team to defeat. He knew it was impossible to escape, and that facing it with his current abilities would be suicide. He felt his extreme bad luck. He had only caught one fish, and now a new monster appears in his only fishing spot, and he desperately hoped the monster wouldn't stay there. Suddenly, he found the monster's huge jaws right behind his head, which terrified him. But the monster didn't attack him. Instead, it began to lick his face with its huge tongue. He was bewildered, covered in the monster's saliva, wondering about the reason for this strange behavior, and even wondered in disbelief if the monster was trying to kill him by licking. He felt disgusted and angry, and yelled at the monster, demanding it to kill him in a clean and quick way, adding that he was not in the mood to tolerate this day. In a final act of defiance, he pointed at it and vowed that he would let it kill him now because he was weak, but he swore that one day, he would be the one to defeat it. The huge monster tilted its head as it looked at the young man. Then, unexpectedly, it let out a deep meow. The young man was extremely surprised and confused, and wondered if he had heard that correctly, then confirmed to himself that he had indeed heard the word meow. He concluded that this monster was designed in the form of a cat, and he liked the innovative idea of designing a non-cute cat with such a majestic appearance. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He connected the fact that the monster was a cat, and that he was holding a fishing rod, and thought that he might be able to survive if he threw the bait and then ran away. He decided to try his luck, so he yelled at the monster, telling it to wait, and told it he would give it a treat, then threw the fish he had caught. Although he thought it wouldn't work, he saw that it was worth a try. The young man threw the fish and started running for his life. When he looked back, he was shocked to see that his plan had worked. The monster had pounced on the fish with enthusiasm. He stopped for a moment, thinking he shouldn't give it up so easily, and pulled it with his fishing rod, but the monster held on tight. So the terrified young man threw the rod and decided to save his own life. The monster sat down and ate the entire fish, swallowing it in one gulp, then licked its lips as if it had enjoyed its meal. But after it finished, it turned its attention back to the young man and pounced on him with incredible speed, creating a powerful wave of energy, and then let out a deafening howl. The young man felt terrified, wondering about the true nature of this creature. Then a system message appeared, announcing his death, telling him he would turn into a ghost and be transported to the graveyard. While he was a ghost, he saw the monster nudging his dead body, and hoped it would lose interest and go away. But the monster flipped his body over and started kneading his chest with its huge paws, just like cats do. He was terrified by this behavior and decided to escape to the graveyard immediately. The young man found himself as a ghost in front of an angel statue, and was offered the chance to be revived with a penalty of losing 5% of his experience. So he sighed, determined to reclaim his fishing spot. He opened the game map, trying to find a solution, and assumed that since the lava zone was the Phoenix's territory, it was likely that the new monster had only appeared for a limited time. The young man returned as a ghost to the lava zone, clinging to a faint hope that the cat-like monster would be gone. But his hope was dashed, as he found it was still there. The monster was circling his body lying on the ground, and he wondered in confusion why it was guarding his corpse instead of leaving, and soon assumed that this damn cat was waiting for him to come back to life just to kill him again. The young man realized there was only one solution he could think of at the moment. His plan was simple and consisted of 2 steps. First, come back to life the moment the monster turns its back, and second, run as fast as possible in the opposite direction. The young man sat and watched, waiting for his opportune moment. The monster lay down beside his corpse and seemed to be dozing off, so the young man realized this was the chance he had been waiting for. He immediately accepted the revival option, and indeed, he came back to life and appeared next to the sleeping monster. He swallowed nervously and tried to sneak away, but he had barely taken a single step when the monster suddenly opened its eyes and rose up behind him unexpectedly. He froze in place with terror, wondering if the monster had been pretending to be asleep, and before he could move, he felt its heavy paw rest on his shoulder. He screamed and tried to escape, but the monster easily caught up with him and crushed him with a powerful blow that ended his life instantly, causing the "You have died" message to appear on the screen again. The monster looked at the corpse with an expression that seemed confused. In the graveyard, as he was offered the revival option again, he thought sarcastically that he had finally found a good way to escape, and that he never expected a day would come when he would use the tactical maneuvers he learned in the army. Indeed, he returned to life this time, but instead of running, he lay flat on the ground in a crawling position, confident in his plan's success. He began to advance slowly and cautiously, stopping when he felt the monster open its eye, and when it closed it again, he continued crawling in complete silence. Suddenly, he made a faint sound, and the monster immediately turned towards him. He was shocked that the monster reacted to such a simple sound. As he lay on the ground, the monster approached him and began to lick him, ready for another round of play, and the young man realized he had gotten involved with the wrong psycho. After dying for the 3rd time, the young man screamed out of sheer frustration. In the real world, he was punching his pillow in anger, annoyed by that deranged monster. He finally decided to go to sleep, thinking he would get an ulcer from the stress if he continued, and convinced himself that even a monster like that wouldn't wait for him until the next day. As he walked around his room, upset by this frustrating memory, he noticed his cat Peachy sleeping with her head inside the game helmet. He smiled a little, thinking she must have fallen asleep in there, and approached her, calling her a little rascal, and noted that she wasn't using the hideout he had bought for her. But suddenly, he felt a strange sensation. He realized that the X-shaped scar on his cat's forehead was in the exact same spot as the scar on the monster in the game. He was shocked for a moment, but he quickly dismissed the idea as impossible, and laughed sarcastically at himself, wondering how a cat could log into a game, and that it was just a coincidence. The next day, he returned to the game, desperately hoping the monster would be gone. He looked around anxiously to discover that the monster had indeed left, and he laughed in relief, but just as he relaxed, the ground shook and the monster appeared before before him again. The monster meowed, and the young man completely lost his temper, deciding he wouldn't fish for lava burry if it was this difficult. The monster turned and showed him its back, so the young man closed his eyes in despair. And when he opened them, he found himself staring at the monster's rear. Suddenly, a mysterious system message appeared, telling him he had been chosen and was granted a hidden servant class. He wondered in confusion about the meaning of this message, repeating the words servant and chosen. Another message appeared, announcing that the power of Kalinus now resides in his being, and he started yelling in protest because he had never heard of such a class before. He realized he was being forced to change his class, and wondered in a panic what was happening. A cyclone formed, and dark energy began to flow around his body. After the process was complete, a final message appeared confirming he had become a servant. The young man wondered in shock and anger how his class had changed, and what had happened to his Holy Knight character. Suddenly he heard a voice in his head calling him servant, and asking if he could hear it. And he realized it was the voice of the giant cat, sending it directly into his mind. The voice introduced itself with a long and grand title, explaining that it was the conqueror who descended to stain the earth with darkness, the embodiment of shadow, and that its great name was Kalinus, protector of the three kingdoms and the first emperor of Noxtera. The young man noted with sarcasm that the monster still had its back to him, and he felt like he was being lectured by its rear end. Kalinus explained that it had encountered a problem during its summoning and that its body wouldn't move as it wished, which is why it chose him to be its servant. The young man wondered if this was a surprise quest and asked Kalinus what it wanted from him, to which the latter told him he must become its hands and feet and help it reclaim its original body. A tutorial quest window appeared, asking him to learn his duties, use skills, and check his master's status, with a mysterious reward called RPP, which made him curious about what it was. Suddenly the monster started acting like a cat, rubbing against his leg and meowing, which surprised him, and he wondered what it was doing and realized this was called butt rubbing. The young man got angry and complained about this ridiculous situation, where his class was changed and now he was being asked for help. So Kalinus calmly told him that if he didn't want to, it could return him to his previous state. The young man decided to first check the nature of this new class and discovered that a servant serves their master and obtains role-playing points, RPP, that allow them to use their master's abilities. He read his list of duties, checked the master's status, provide a comfortable home, and offer delicious treats, and noted that they resembled the duties of a servant to a cat more than anything else. He figured he would find out how to use the points later and completed the quest, then opened the skills window, which included hunt a monster and make snacks. He concluded that the class was like a tamer who serves their master. And as he was thinking about quitting, he remembered the notice for the hospital bill payment. A new idea came to him. If he could negotiate the rewards and working hours, this might not be so bad after all. He completely changed his tone, addressing the monster respectfully as Master, expressing his understanding of its frustration, and then formally introduced himself as Servant Kim, asserting that he was an expert in studying cats and that Kalinus had come to the right person. Kalinus asked if he could handle it well, and he replied that actions speak louder than words. The young man knew the monster didn't fear him, but he decided to use the situation to his advantage. He explained to Kalinus that cats don't let strangers get close, then cautiously approached and petted the monster. The monster responded happily, rubbing against him and meowing. Kalinus was impressed by what it saw and told him it was beginning to trust him, to which the young man replied confidently that it wouldn't find a servant like him. A message appeared stating that communication between them was successful, and the window showed that Kalinus' status was anxious with a high stress index, thus completing the quest to check its status. The young man wondered why his master's anxiety level was so high, and he soon realized the time had come for monsters to reappear in the area. A small fire salamander-like monster appeared, so the young man told his master that he had managed to check its condition. He informed it that it was in a state of severe anxiety, and when Kalinus asked why, the young man guessed the reason was the unfamiliar environment, explaining that cats feel anxious outside their territory. Kalinus rejected this explanation, considering anxiety a feeling for the weak, and declared that the solution was to make this entire world its territory. The body of Kalinus instinctively pounced on the salamander monster, but its stress index rose even higher, and the salamander managed to escape, which increased its stress. Kalinus roared angrily, wondering where the prey had gone, and at that moment, the young man activated the capture skill. He aimed a frame shaped like a silver platter at the fleeing salamander and opened it, and a system message announced that he had successfully captured it. The young man appeared holding the covered platter and calmly told Kalinus that this was part of his service. He then asked his master if it had been very disappointed after losing the prey, and after that, he released the captive salamander from under the platter's lid. Immediately, Kalinus crushed the salamander, venting its anger. The young man asked his master for its opinion of his service, and a message appeared stating that its mood had improved and its stress index had decreased. Kalinus admitted it felt more at ease, and the young man expressed his pleasure. After proving his worth, the young man suggested they start negotiating now, explaining with a smile that he had a family to support, and therefore needed vacation time and enough money to secure his livelihood. Kalinus was shocked by the idea of a servant getting a vacation, and the young man nervously confirmed that this was correct. Kalinus admitted it had none of this land's money, so the young man suggested an alternative solution. He would keep the items Kalinus obtained from hunting. Kalinus agreed to this compensation, since it needed him to control its body, and asked if that was enough, to which the young man happily agreed. The young man thought about how he had been at a loss about how to make a living after no longer being able to fish for lava burry, but he now discovered that monopolizing the items he got from his master was more profitable and safer. He felt that luck had finally smiled upon him, and that every cloud has a silver lining. He noticed that as soon as a monster's corpse disappeared, his master Kalinus would lose interest and leave, which made him wonder if it was really just a big cat. He decided to move on to the final step of his service. So he used the make snacks skill, and the system informed him that the only snack he could make was salt grilled, with a magical motion. He finished making the salt grilled salamander, which appeared before him in a bowl. The system asked if he wanted to inform his master that the snack was ready, and he agreed, feeling curious. Suddenly, Kalinus appeared beside him, wondering about the source of the smell, and the young man realized that the snack-making skill was also a way to summon his unpredictable master. Kalinus tasted the food and showed great admiration for its flavor, then licked the bowl clean and asked for more. The young man eagerly agreed and promised to bring more immediately. System messages appeared announcing the completion of his tutorial quest. He received 20 role-playing points, RPP, and an additional 5 points for his master's satisfaction, and a new quest for the second phase was created. The young man began to collect all the items that dropped from the monsters Kalinus hunted, and he noticed that large numbers of monsters were starting to appear again, and his master was actively hunting them. He thought about how his pockets were filling with money every time his master hunted, while he didn't lift a finger, and he smiled happily, wondering if this was the taste of auto-hunting. He started running around the battlefield, collecting loot and enthusiastically thanking his master. Kalinus noticed his happiness, and the young man promised that he would do his best to help him. When the skill's cooldown ended, he decided to use it again with enthusiasm, and Kalinus came rushing eagerly to eat its meal. The young man opened the quest window and accepted the start of the second phase, which required him to use his abilities to solve a problem his master was facing, moving to a nearby town, with a reward of 50 points. He thought that this task would normally seem easy, but now he was facing a dilemma. How could he drag this big cat with him to the town? The status window for Kalinus appeared again, showing that its stress index would rise if it left its territory, and the young man realized this was the problem he had to solve. The young man approached his master Kalinus, who was near a volcanic lava pool, and told him he had a plan, so Kalinus ordered him to speak. He suggested that there must be a reason why Kalinus was summoned to this area, and that the best course of action was to move to a nearby town to search for information. Kalinus agreed with his assessment, and the young man felt a little guilty because this idea was originally from a quest he had received. Kalinus wondered how to achieve this, and if its movement was restricted by the concept of a cat's territory. The young man reminded him that its territory expanded slightly with every monster it defeated, which Kalinus confirmed. The young man explained that they had to defeat the region's master, the phoenix, so they could move freely. Kalinus understood the plan and asked about the phoenix's strength, and the young man told him it was an immortal bird that grew stronger each time it rose from death. Kalinus found this creature interesting and declared with confidence that it would kneel before its power. But the young man pointed out a problem. The phoenix breathes fire, and the cat's instincts would drive the body of Kalinus to run and hide. Therefore, he concluded that they must first make Kalinus unafraid of fire. As soon as fire was touched, the body's instincts reacted, as Kalinus jumped back and rolled on the ground in a panic. It admitted that it did indeed feel fear, and ordered its servant to find a way to overcome this fear by any means necessary. The young man offered a lava-buri fish to the frightened Kalinus, then announced that the fear would vanish once he submerged it in the lava, which shocked Kalinus, who asked if his plan was to throw it into the volcano. The young man confirmed that this was the most certain way to adapt, and when Kalinus expressed doubt, the young man reassured it, explaining that its body, as a boss monster, possessed very high heat resistance. Kalinus was surprised to learn this, and the young man tried to tempt it with the fish. The young man threw the fish into the lava, but Kalinus sat calmly on a rock in the middle of it, which astonished the young man. Kalinus announced that the fish no longer tempted it, and the young man was shocked by how quickly it had lost interest. Then it leaped gracefully from the lava. The young man realized he needed to move on to Plan B, so he used a recall spell to return to a registered point, and told his master he would be right back. Kalinus panicked, asking him where he was going and if he was going to leave it alone, but the young man disappeared through the portal, leaving it to search for him anxiously. The young man instantly teleported to the city of Granadia. He entered the adventurer's warehouse, where the shopkeeper welcomed him. He asked for sugarcane, ethereal spring water, a climbing rope, and dynamite. When she asked him his purpose, he replied that he intended to tame a monster, then added that he also needed a catapult, which puzzled her. She wished him victory, and as he was leaving, he felt he was forgetting something. He suddenly remembered and hurried back, telling her there was one more thing he wanted. The young man returned to the lava zone and headed to a giant tree known as Bujinmok, or the wood that doesn't burn. He explained that a monster living in this tree had gained fire resistance by eating its bark. The young man climbed the tree and placed sugarcane as bait, as he knew this monster loved sweets, and he remembered how difficult it had been to hunt it in the past. The tree shook, and a fire monster emerged from it, announcing itself as Kerberos the Great, guardian of the underworld, and angrily wondering who dared to disturb its sleep. As Kerberos was eating the sugarcane, the young man poured ethereal spring water on it, water capable of extinguishing the fiercest flames and making the target lose its fire resistance for 5 minutes. The young man thought that the favorite prey of cats is the mouse. The flames of Kerberos were extinguished, and the great guardian of the underworld turned into a small, fluffy pink fire mouse. The fire mouse shouted in shock, wondering what the young man had done to it, and the latter addressed it cheerfully, saying it was cute as usual. The mouse got angry and threatened him, but the young man continued to mock it. The mouse offered to spare his life in exchange for the sugarcane, but the young man described it as pathetically cute. The mouse had a bad feeling and realized it couldn't use its fire, so it decided to attack physically, shouting that it had given him a chance to survive. As it was attacking, it suddenly turned and fled, vowing to kill the young man next time. The young man shouted, trying to stop it, but the fire mouse jumped directly into a nearby lava pool. The young man smiled sarcastically, saying he was just about to tell it that it had lost its fire resistance. The fire mouse was screaming from the intense pain of the lava as it tried to get out, while the young man laughed hysterically. The mouse continued to cry, and the young man continued to laugh. A new tutorial window appeared, explaining that he could use role-playing points, RPP, to turn a monster into a follower, which would not take damage from its master's attacks and could be strengthened with points. The young man grabbed the crying fire mouse and carried it, and the mouse asked him what he was doing and where he was taking it. The young man told it seriously that he was sorry, but he was going to offer it as a sacrifice to his master, and asked it not to talk to him so he wouldn't get attached. The mouse was horrified and began to lament its fate that it would die before getting married, and the young man replied sarcastically that it was truly a shame. The mouse begged for its life, so the young man offered it a way out. If it did what he asked, it would not only survive, but he would also help it find a life partner. The mouse immediately agreed and desperately asked what it had to do. The young man calmed him down and explained that the first way to survive was to become the master's follower, clarifying that a follower is unaffected by the master's attacks, ensuring its survival. Then he offered it the second way, which was to lure the master and make him fall into the lava, which shocked the mouse, who called him an ungrateful servant. The mouse agreed to become a follower, reminding the young man of his promise. The young man opened the Create Follower window and began the process, and a magic circle appeared around the fire mouse. The mouse was turned into a magical essence and captured under the young man's silver platter, and a system message confirmed that the fire mouse had become a follower. The scene returned to Kalinas, who was waiting anxiously, and asked its servant why he was late. The young man told it to look forward to what he had brought, assuring it that there was nothing in the world that could excite it more than this. The young man released the follower mouse from under the platter. When Kalinas saw the mouse, it felt a strange and exciting sensation, and its heart began to beat rapidly. The young man told the mouse, Squeaky, that his master would be facing the phoenix, and assigned it the task of eliminating its master's fear, and asked it to lead the master for the great cause of darkness. The young man gave the mouse a speed potion, so it dashed off, awakening the cat instinct in Kalinas, who excitedly took off after it, heading straight for the lava. Kalinas charged forward on instinct, leaping across rocks as it chased the fire mouse, determined not to let it escape. The mouse shot a burst of fire, but Kalinas skillfully dodged it and continued to close in on its prey. The young man watched from a distance, and grabbed the dynamite detonator, thinking he might need to use it to buy the mouse some time. The mouse felt that the young man had tricked it, but suddenly the young man appeared between them, blocking Kalinas' path and yelling at the mouse to keep running. Kalinas was surprised by this intervention, and the young man apologized for the misunderstanding. The mouse continued to run, until it reached a crack, and passed through it to the edge of a cliff overlooking a vast lake of lava, where Kalinas cornered it, asserting that it could not escape. Kalinas told it that it would play with it, but the mouse boldly challenged it to try and catch it, and jumped over the lava lake. Without hesitation, Kalinas leaped after it, completely forgetting its fear of fire in the heat of the chase. The young man noticed how his master's actions sometimes overlapped with those of his pet cat. Kalinas asked about this cat, and whether it was the family he had mentioned earlier. The young man answered yes, describing her as small, cute, and a sore loser, and he remembered how his cat, Peachy, would refuse his touch at first, only to eventually place her paw on his hand. He smiled as he remembered, then placed his hand on Kalinas' giant paw and offered his help, and after that, he gently pushed it towards the lava. Kalinas found that touching the lava gave it a pleasant, warm feeling, and it wanted to enjoy this bath. The young man told it that now that it had overcome its fear of fire, it could face the phoenix, and Kalinas agreed with confidence. The phoenix appeared on the horizon, and the young man explained that defeating it required preventing its ability to be reborn, and he told his master that he had devised a strategy for it, which led Kalinas to describe him as a dependable servant. The phoenix emerged from the lava, while the young man and his master prepared to face it. The bird spread its fiery wings and threatened its opponents, then attacked by breathing a massive stream of fire, but Kalinas dodged it. The young man knew that the real problem lay in the bird's immortality, and he explained to Kalinas that to eliminate it, he must strike its core precisely during its second rebirth. Kalinas doubted its ability to do so, but the young man confidently assured it that he would make it possible. The battle began, as the phoenix swooped down and Kalinas charged to meet it. The bird tried to ascend, while Kalinas followed it quickly, and dodged its fire attacks with amazing agility, then managed to get on top of it, and struck it forcefully into the ground. The defeated phoenix declared that it would rise again, and the young man told his master that the first phase was over. He explained that the phoenix's size and destructive power would now double, but Kalinas was unfazed. The phoenix rose from the lava, now much larger and stronger, and vowed to burn them, and turn them both to ash, as flames filled the area, and then it launched a massive fireball. Kalinas stood in the face of the flames, seemingly protecting its servant, so the young man gave tactical instructions to target the bird after it slowed down. The phoenix charged again, and Kalinas leaped into the air to intercept it, and succeeded in knocking it down and hitting it several times. Kalinas grabbed the phoenix's body, and then, with all its might, crushed it, and the young man was impressed by the ease with which it had finished the second phase. As the phoenix was dying, it vowed to bloom again, and this was its crucial second rebirth moment. Kalinas grabbed it and began to punch its core repeatedly to prevent it from being reborn again. Amidst a volcanic eruption, the young man gave his instructions to the fire mouse, Squeaky, to lure his master to the cliff again. The young man prepared himself, realizing that the real challenge was beginning now. He remembered his previous attempts to defeat the phoenix, and how teams would fail to stop its rebirth due to the violent volcanic eruptions, which were a sign of the bird's will to be reborn. He had spent months in the past thinking about how to overcome this obstacle, and now, he hoped his master could follow his plan. The plan began, as the mouse lured Kalinas, and the latter started chasing it, until they reached the edge of the cliff, and when the mouse jumped, Kalinas rushed after it, unable to stop. At that moment, the young man used a skill to set up a catapult, positioned it near the edge, and the giant wooden catapult appeared before him. The young man encouraged the mouse to speed up a bit, and when it felt scared, he told it that it should be proud, because it was the only one capable of leading the master. The young man launched a projectile from the catapult carrying the mouse towards the volcano where the phoenix's core was. The mouse was standing on the core, while Kalinas was approaching it at rocket speed. The mouse remembered that a follower takes no damage from its master's attacks, and wondered in terror if the young man had tricked it. Kalinas collided with the phoenix's core with tremendous force, shattering it. The young man celebrated the plan's success and collected the dormant bird's core. A series of system messages appeared, confirming the phoenix's defeat, that the lava zone had become the master's territory, that they had achieved the record for the fastest victory, and that the young man received 30 RPP. The mouse woke up confused and thought it was in heaven, so the young man mocked it. And the mouse realized it was alive and felt scared. Kalinas arrived and praised the excellent strategy, so the young man congratulated his master on becoming the master of the lava zone. A huge temple-like structure appeared, and they walked towards it until they reached the inside where they found a treasure chest. And the young man thought that this was the reward for achieving the record, and felt that he could raise his hopes a little higher.